My name is Paul Bisanti, Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce Brantford-Brant and your host for this evening. Today we'll be having a fireside chat with the federal election candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada, Larry Brock. This series kicks off the 2021-2022 Chamber TV series, a weekly show dedicated to showcasing the best that business in Brantford has to offer. And as we get started, I'd like to introduce you to Larry Brock of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
So Larry, before we jump into the platform, you've had an extensive career in law. What would you say some of the more rewarding or personally taxing times in that career have been?
It's been an extremely rewarding career. It's something that I've wanted literally all of my life. My grandmother remembers me talking about being a lawyer since I was 5 years old. So it was kind of nice just focusing in on a goal all through high school, all through university. Achieving that goal was a big success, a big marker in my life. I started off with as a sole practitioner in Brantford in 1997. Prior to that, I was with a small general firm in Hamilton. And I developed a bit of a general litigation practice, really enjoyed the litigation aspect of things, being in court, standing up on my feet, advocating on behalf of clients. That was very rewarding. Met my wife in 2000. She didn't like the work-life balance that I had as a sole practitioner. Could only basically comfortably give myself a week of holidays per year because I was worried about generating the revenue and supporting my staff. So I looked at opportunities, and one of the opportunities I really was fond of was potentially working as a Crown attorney. So I made my inquiries, and as luck would have it, in 2004 I was afforded the opportunity to join the Brantford Crown Attorney's Office. And there I've been ever since, until I took the leave of absence to pursue this new journey in life. So very, very rewarding in terms of my ability to represent the public as a whole. As a member of the Queen's prosecution team, we represent the community in which we live in, and we uphold the laws by which we have to follow. And every day, my job is to hold offenders accountable for their actions. So you temper that responsibility with skill and compassion. And it's been very rewarding for me to see successes. Now, there are a number of failures, of course, but I have seen a number of successes where people have made mistakes in their lives, have learned to equip themselves with skills going through the criminal justice system, being placed on probation and probation services, assisting them with some of their criminogenic factors, and seeing them just live a robust life thereafter that's crime-free. And a marker for me personally, Paul, is when I'm out in the community, I will have people that I have prosecuted come up to me and thank me. Doesn't happen a lot,
Wow. Yeah.
but to thank me for being as firm but yet fair with them and giving them the ability to rehabilitate themselves.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. It was a nice gesture. It doesn't, as I say, it doesn't happen a lot, but I've had that over the years, that type of measurement. On a regular and consistent basis, the feedback that I get from victims that I assist through the criminal justice system has been very, very rewarding. As one of the most senior members of the Brantford Crown Attorney's Office, I assume the responsibility of some really difficult, significant, serious cases.
Right.
Of personal violence against victims domestically, through sexual assaults, through break-and-enters, through homicides, and being able to connect with the victims on a professional level and giving them the confidence that they're not alone in the process.
Right.
I always take pride in whenever I get assigned a criminal file of a significant nature, I insist that a meeting be set up with the victim, with victim services, and quite often with the investigating officer, because I want to establish a bond, a
Right.
professional, working, respectful bond with my victims right at the outset. And it's nice to know that when they leave my office that day, they're comforted into knowing that they're working with a team of professionals that actually believe them,
Right.
that have their backs.
Yeah.
And win or lose, I never sugarcoat any prosecutions. I advise all my victims that it's not up to me to determine guilt or innocence. It's up to me to present the facts that are presented and to make an argument as to why I feel the offender should be held responsible.
Sure.
So win or lose, they're informed at the outset. And again, markers for success for me have been numerous thank you letters that I receive, recommendations to my manager about the
Those
work
always
that
help, yeah.
that I've done. So that's helped,
Yep.
increase my portfolio within the Crown Attorney's office. And again, I see those victims on the street afterwards. And in fact, I just saw one, as a matter of fact, this past weekend over in West Brant.
Yep.
It's a very difficult case, and she told me it involved her young daughter. And she informed me that she often thinks about me and the trust that I had in her and the ability to put together a first-class prosecution. And she was thankful 10 years after the fact that I made a difference in her life.
That's really neat. You mentioned representing the community
Yes.
a lot. So the community here in Brantford-Brant and the Six Nations and the Mississaugas of the First Credit, over 160,000 people are represented in this riding. What motivated you to run for this office? Why now? Why this opportunity? Why this party?
Excellent question, Paul. This has been a dream in the making for a number of years. Through my professional responsibilities, I have taken extreme satisfaction in my public service. I am a public servant through the Ontario Public Service, of course. So the thought of running for office, to be honest with you, I have been kicking that around in my mind literally for the last 10, 11 years. The very moment I walked into Phil McColman's 2011 campaign, and I said to Phil, I said, "Hi, my name is Larry Brock. You don't know me. You know my father. You've worked with my father. My dad's a painting contractor." And I said, "I want to know everything that there is to running a for a top-notch political campaign, and put me to work."
Yeah.
And work he did. And what he assigned me during that first campaign was canvassing, door knocking, communicating with the public. And I always had the ability, Paul, to not feel any sort of trepidation or fear talking to complete strangers. I consider it a challenge. You never know what's going to come out of that person's mouth. You don't know whether they're receptive to discourse or whether they're just too busy to talk or simply don't want to hear what you have to say. So it was always a challenge for me to form that relationship at the door. So I really, over the years, grew fond of the political process. I studied politics in university. I majored in political science. I've always had a keen love for the political process, federally, provincially, even municipally. So really, I was thinking about every time that I would secure a sign location for Phil McColman or Will Boma in 2018, I always said to myself, just imagine that feeling, seeing Larry Brock on those signs. And quite often I'd be traveling with my family and I'd say, you know what? I was responsible for that sign placement, this sign placement. Phil and I would always have a nice friendly competition during every campaign as to who would secure the most signs.
All right.
It was nice. I often won, but you know what? But he's the candidate, right? He had to do more focusing in on issues as opposed
If
to
you won, he won.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So to put this in a fast forward scenario, Paul, 2019, Phil had asked me, and I felt very honored by this request. He had asked me on election day in 2019 if I would accompany him for the entire day as he felt that I grounded him, I calmed him down, and he wanted my enthusiasm and positive energy. I didn't think I exuded that, but I guess he did. And we had a great time together. And that's when he sort of planted a real serious seed in my mind that ultimately he was thinking about retirement, didn't know when, didn't know if the 2019 campaign, if he was successful, would be his last. But it asked me, had you ever considered running for political office? This being my first ever opportunity to run for political office, I was encouraged by his confidence in me, and I was pleased to hear that he felt that he had confidence in me. I said I would consider it. I would seriously consider it, but I would have to have some obviously serious discussions with my family. So that afternoon, I spoke with my wife. She sort of shelved it, thought it was interesting, but again, she's very proud of what I've done in my Crown career, in my lawyering career. Very fond of that and proud of that. But she's just been a rock to me throughout this process, has encouraged me. So when Phil made his announcement in December, did some real soul searching very quickly, got the approval from my family, and literally, Paul, within 1 week, I was ready to launch. But there was some hiccups because I still had professional obligations. I needed to work with my ministry to ensure that I wasn't putting myself in any conflict of interest. So I got approval in terms of even making the announcement that I wanted to run for political office. Had to make sure that I was okay to announce that in my professional career, I am an assistant Crown attorney, so I had to get clearance for that. All that being said, I did get the clearance by the end of January, and that's when we launched the nomination process.
Very interesting.
Yes.
So you've been involved then with Phil for since 2011, you said?
2011.
So almost a decade now.
Yes.
So you're pretty plugged into what's going on in the community.
Yes.
Being in the Chamber of Commerce, what do you think the 2 or 3 key issues the business community in this riding are facing coming out of this pandemic?
The biggest issue, obviously, Paul, is job recovery. We have seen the substantial economic impact to our small businesses, to our medium-sized businesses, the supports that the federal government did put into place with full approval of the opposition parties, including the Conservative Party, have been sufficient to keep businesses afloat, but by no means has it been sustainable. And what I mean by that, Paul, is clearly to operate a business successfully, you have to have an employee base. And the employee base, unfortunately, shrunk to a substantial degree during this COVID, such that, and to this day, I drive around the city and I see want ads. Employees, please come back, competitive wages, good hours. I just driving down in West Brant, my favorite breakfast establishment, Kingsway, is crying out for some help. So that was the reality, and it still is the reality, is to attract the workforce to come back. And we want, as a Conservative Party, if I can just put a partisan spin on this for a moment, Paul, as a Conservative Party, we want to reshift the focus from a government dependency outlook for the employee base to a paycheck mentality. It was important to support Canadians. I get that. We as a Conservative Party want to support Canadians, and we have a job recovery plan that deals with that. I spoke about that at the Chamber debate. But we have to ensure that businesses have an employee base. That is the crux of the issue. So clearly that is a predominant issue that I feel is important coming out of this pandemic. The entire Conservative platform is built around Canada's recovery plan. And when we speak about issues that are really relevant, I believe, to every Canadian, but particularly here in Brantford-Brant, it is people are eager. They're eager to shop. They're eager to get back to work. They're eager to see businesses thriving. They're eager to see crime being reduced in our community. They're eager to deal with the problems that we have with the homeless issue, the affordability issues, the mental health issues, the opiate crisis. This is what I'm hearing, Paul, consistently every day at the door. And we have a plan to address all of that in our Canada's recovery plan.
That's excellent to hear. One of the things that the Chamber has had on its radar over the past couple of years now is the opioid crisis, as you referenced. It's a social concern, certainly, but it's also an economic one. The businesses in our downtown have, on the daily basis, encounters with people who are struggling with opioid addictions. Can you expand on the Conservative Party's platform, or what you would see yourself doing as a representative of this riding to tackle this crisis that's, yes, it's a local one, but it's actually a nationwide one as well?
It is. It is. I've recently read a statistic that approximately every single day across this great country, 17 people die of overdoses due to opiates. It is something that society has not seen over a number of years, but has increased substantially, in my view, over the last 10 years. I see it professionally. I see it tied as a root cause to criminality. I see it essentially in court. We have a number of overdoses even in court as people come to address their issues. We see it most recently, I believe there was an overdose death in downtown Brantford. So it is a major concern for me, as not only as a citizen of this great city and this great riding, but also as a professional, that we need to deal with this appropriately. I'm seeing the impacts already with a number of families that I've spoken to that have concerns about what's happening strictly in the core, and the blight and the bad image that it's portraying, such that I think that Laurier University, the downtown campus, is feeling the impacts, that parents are not feeling safe to leave their children living in the downtown core, seeing the problems that exist. It's something that needs to be addressed, I believe, at all three levels. This is a municipal issue, it's a provincial issue, it is a federal issue, and we as Conservatives have a plan, Paul. We want to treat the opiate crisis as a health crisis, first and foremost. The lawyer in me also will suggest to you, and this is spelled out in our recovery plan, that we want to refocus the attention away from the user, but focus in on the distributor and the trafficker. That's really what police ought to be focusing in on. Unfortunately, it's easy pickings for police to look at the user. It's still a criminal offense. Unfortunately, we don't have those liberal laws that you have in some countries in Europe that allow the legality of all types of drugs that are now deemed to be illegal in Canada. But that's the reality. We have to focus in on the core issue. Our recovery plan, Paul, will invest $325 million over the next 3 years to create 1,000 residential drug treatment beds and build 50 recovery community centers across the country. Part of my platform, Paul, personally, and with the Conservative plan, is to address, obviously, the Indigenous issues. On the opiate crisis, they're not immune to that issue. It's a real problem on our Six Nations and Mississaugas. We want to enhance the delivery of culturally appropriate addiction treatment and prevention services on all First Nation communities across this great country with the high needs. We want to provide $1 billion over 5 years to boost funding for Indigenous mental health and drug treatment programs. We want to partner with all provinces to ensure the naloxone kits are available free of charge with adequate supplies on a daily basis. And most importantly, we want to reorient, reword, amend, call it what you may, the Canadian Drug and Substances Strategy towards ensuring that every person struggling with an addiction or an opiate addiction has the opportunity to recover. That'll be our focus, recovery. And then we have the opiate issue, we have the mental health issue. And I don't know if you wanted me to get into the mental health issues.
Well, it actually brings up another question that we touched on a little bit in the debate. Brantford Council has established a new downtown task force. The chamber is represented on it. Will Bauma's office is represented on it. And the federal candidate is asked to be part of this task force as well. I guess my question to you would be, if you're successful in this election, do you see yourself being able to dedicate some time towards being on the downtown Brantford task force to be hands-on in helping with this problem?
Paul, it's not an issue of will I make the time. The issue is when can I get started?
That's great to hear.
Okay? Because living in this community all of my life, I am best suited to address the issues that need to be addressed first and foremost. And that is a priority to me. I will be literally within days. I'm sure that if I am successful in this election, there's going to be a very steep learning curve in terms of what I need to do with my party in Ottawa. But I will never lose sight of the fact that it is the good people of Brantford-Brant that have given me this opportunity, and it is my responsibility to ensure that I am delivering to this community on an expedited basis, and that's addressing those pressing needs. So I will reach out to that task force. I will say, I am ready to start working with you. What would you like me to do? Where do I start?
Excellent.
Okay? That's the type of leader that I want to be, Paul. That's the type of leadership qualities that I have exhibited literally over the last 30 years of my professional career. As you know, it has not just been for me, it has not just been politics, it's not just been law, it's not just been family. I have given back my free time to this community that I'm extremely proud of. I have volunteered on charities. I was so thrilled to be given the opportunity to be the chair of the United Way in 2015, working with 14 extremely talented professionals and raising over $1.6 million for local charities that were really struggling. I personally toured. One of my mandates when I was the chair of the United Way, it's one thing to be given that privilege to manage a significant annual campaign. It's quite another to dig deep and to find out how this money is assisting those charities. Right. So I took it upon myself, Paul, to meet with the executive director. At that time it was Miss Sherry Haynes. And I said, Sherry, I want to go on a tour of all of the local 16 charities that we are assisting in the United Way. I want to know what they do. I want to know how they work. I want to know how our money is assisting them. I want to know what their challenges are. So I went on a learning experience over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. And because of that experience, I just fell in love with the good work that was being done by the Crossing All Bridges Learning Center.
Fantastic.
And when there was a vacancy open for a directorship, I immediately applied, and I've enjoyed such great times there leading that organization to where it is today. We bought our own new building over on Sky Acres. We've increased enrollment. We've increased services. We were actually even open providing online services during the pandemic for people who are really have struggling with those needs that they had, and to be able to be connected to the center, connected socially with their peers was really a sight to be seen.
That's great to hear. We don't have a lot of time left, probably 2 or 3 minutes, but in that time, I'd like to sort of get your thoughts on the housing crisis. Yes. We know that a lot of people who are struggling with substance abuse problems also have a correlation with housing needs as well. How do you see a resolution to the housing crisis in our community and across the nation?
It's a major issue, Paul. So speaking it in general terms, clearly we have a demand and we have a supply issue. And what I want to see, what we're doing as conservatives, what I want to see here in Brantford-Brant is to work with the provinces, to work with municipalities, to reshift the ability for municipalities to partner with the federal government, to take a look at the brownfields, to take a look at the gray fields, to look at development that can put shovels into the ground now, as opposed to large developers who are purchasing vacant land that have to go through the approval process that unfortunately takes anywhere, and Paul, you know this personally in your professional responsibilities, could take up to 10 years. That needs to be addressed. And I know that you have to have the appropriate approvals, but why does it take 10 years before a developer can put a shovel into the ground? But that doesn't deal with the affordability issue. So we as conservatives, we want to provide tax incentives to builders, tax incentives to foreign investors to take a look at a rental market on an affordability basis in communities right across the country, but particularly here in Brantford-Brant. We want to take a look at deferring some of the capital gains so that investors can start looking at increasing the quantity of available rental homes in the community, purchasing up properties, converting those properties, and making them available, and knowing that they're not going to be subjected to a capital gains tax immediately upon sale.
Right.
Okay? So there are a number of measures, Paul, all designed, ready to take effect now if a conservative party forms government. And we want to ensure that this is a priority. We want to actually build 1 million homes over the next 3 years across this country.
Thank you. I think that that pretty much does it for our time here. I appreciate your thoughts on the housing crisis. As you indicated, this is something professionally I'm very acutely aware of,
Yes.
and glad to hear your thoughts on it.
Yes.
Really appreciate you coming in today. We hope that the viewers have had an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better, get to know the real Larry Brock behind the name and the face on the signs. And we hope that this platform gives our business communities and the voters an opportunity to weigh out the issues that are really at the heart of what Brantford and Brant and the Six Nations and the Mississaugas of the First Credit really need. So once again, really appreciate it, Larry. Thank you for coming in.
And thank you so much for inviting me.